Okay, Vino Madonai Eloheinu Aleinu Maaseh Yadeinu Kohen Aleinu Maaseh Yadeinu Kohen. I'd like to thank Rabbi Klein for graciously inviting me to come to your yeshiva, Lev Simcha. What a beautiful name for yeshiva, Lev Simcha, heart of happiness. That's exactly where we all need to be. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Parashat HaShavua, which is Parashat Lech Lecha. And I'm also going to connect it to what's going on in the world today and see if we can come to some conclusions about what the Torah is telling us. Because it says in Pirkei Avot, Hafoch ba ki hakol ba. A person should always look into the Torah because everything is there, and which means there are messages in the Torah for our life this week, right now, that are in the parasha. And if we study the parasha, we can't figure out a message for our personal life or our community life in the parasha. We have to study it again because clearly we didn't catch the message. So I just want to do a little chazarah what I talked about last week because it's a little bit connected to this week. Last week, we talked about two parashot, Bereshit and Noach. And one of the ideas I gave over on Bereshit is that we know that there are mitzvot in the Torah, 613. And if you look at Sefer HaChinuch, there are 3 mitzvot in all of Sefer Bereshit. Pru Uvu, then there's Brit Milah, and then there's Gid HaNasheh. And then the rest of all the mitzvot begin in Parashat Bo. And that's why Rashi asked the famous question regarding why does the Torah start with Bereshit? It should start with Bo. And the message is because one day the Goyim are going to say that you're thieves, you stole the land of the Canaanites. And your answer should be very, very simple. God created the world. He initially gave it to Canaanites, and then afterwards he gave it to the Jewish people. So since it's his world, he can give it to whomever he chooses, and he chose to give it to us. And the Torah is not pruvu. The Zohar says the first mitzvah of the Torah is Shit Chochma Yirat Hashem. The first is Yirat Hashem. If a person doesn't have Yirat Hashem, even if he's got 612 perfect, he has nothing. Yirat Hashem is the backbone. It's the foundation for the building. We discussed that last week. You build a building, you want to add floor on. If the foundation is schwach, you can't add a floor on because what's going to happen? The building's going to collapse. Yes? And as a person grows in Torah knowledge, as a person grows in, and that's learned from the first pasuk of the Torah. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. What is Reshit? Reshit chochma yirat Hashem. So the first thing we learn in Bereshit is yirat Hashem. The Zohar then says there's a second mitzvah of the Torah. What's the second? We talked about this last week. Now I'm building on what we talked about last week. How do we learn how to love God? To have fear of God or God, that's much easier. Love. I mean, some people in Hollywood spend their whole life trying to figure out what love is and can't figure it out. What does it mean to love someone? Basic question. What does it mean to love someone? I'm going to ask every young man in this room. Hopefully, I'm pretty sure, your mother and father, they love you, yes? If anybody else in the world loves you, they yes, okay? Hopefully that we haven't lost their love. What does it mean that your parents love you? What does that mean? What? They will give to you, even though they may not receive in return. As a grandfather at this point in my life, I can clearly say, Baruch Hashem, I'm starting to see the fruits of my labor, which is grandchildren. That's called in business world ROI, return on investment, okay? Generally with children, the return on investment takes 20 or 25 years. That's what we call the long game. When you invest, there's the short game and then there's the long game. So your parents love you and they give to you, even though sometimes all we give our parents is aggravation or expenses, yes? So the way we show love for our parents is by giving back, giving to them. And the ultimate giving is when a person gives without expectation of a return. That is the ultimate Hashem. Says in the pasuk, "Ve'ahata et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha b'chol nafshecha b'chol meodecha." And the rabbis teach us, what does that mean? B'chol levavecha b'shnei Tov and Yetzer Hara. To worship Hashem with Yetzer Tov, that's pretty straightforward. How do you do that? By coming to a Torah class. How do you worship Hashem with the Yetzer Hara? Can anybody tell me how you do that? Because you have to, it's not libecha, which means one heart, levavecha, which means 2 hearts. And trust me, I've looked inside the human body. I'm a doctor. I can tell you inside the human body is only 1 heart. There's no such thing as having 2 hearts. So what is levavecha? Hearts, with plural. So the Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara. How do you worship Hashem with Yetzer Hara? Yes.
I'll give you an example. Learn Torah and for the haughtiness of it. For example.
Okay, but that's not worshiping Hashem. That's worshiping yourself.
Okay.
How do you serve Hashem with the Yetzer Hara? Yes.
You use the Yetzer Hara like jealousy and other stuff, other bad deeds, but you have to be jealous on something like Torah or something.
Kinat sofrim marbe chokhmah. Very good. You take the midah of kinah, jealousy, which is a horrible, horrible trait generally, and you change it over into something else, like kinat sofrim. Or we have the example of the sotah, the husband who's jealous for his wife and schleps her over to the Bet HaMikdash because he's afraid that she didn't behave herself. Yes, that's called kinah. But that kinah, that jealousy is good. Very good. That is one way. What's another way a person can show their love of Hashem with the Yetzer Hara? Okay, but that's Yetzer Tov. You need to you have to always fight the Yetzer Hara with the Yetzer Tov. Yes.
By beating the Yetzer Hara in a certain way, and teaching other people on how to.
Okay, how do you beat the Yetzer Hara? That's the question. Fights very, very hard. The last Yetzer Hara wants a Jewish man to do is to learn. So you fight the Yetzer Hara. How do you deal with this? Very simple. Person goes to work. My rabbi told me this. It's a good secret. Learn it for the future if you go into business, okay? You go to work. You have a store. And what happens? It's a little slow. There's no customers that day for whatever reason. What do? Open up a sefer. What's going to happen? Yetzer Hara is going to say, I don't want this guy learning. I'm going to send him customers. That's how you fight against the Yetzer Hara.
12, 15.
Okay, 12, 15, right? So it's hard to learn when a person is hungry. So you have a Torah shiur, and what you have, they bring sushi, or they bring kibbeh, or they bring some type of snacks. Why? So because while a person is learning, the Yetzer Hara is going to say, come on, you're really hungry. Get the heck out of there. Go do something else. There's something better to do. So what do? You take yourself a cookie, and now what happens? The Yetzer Hara is quiet. This is how a person can love Hashem with the Yetzer Hara. B'chol nafshecha. What is b'chol nafshecha?
All your soul.
What does that mean? I'm looking for what the rabbis say. What did the rabbis say? What does it mean? What did Rabbi Akiva say? Rabbi Akiva, when he was tortured by the Romans for doing what? Teaching Torah. What a terrible sin he did. He taught Torah publicly against the law. Baruch Hashem, we live in a country here where it's not prohibited to teach Torah publicly. But in that time, in Roman time, it was not allowed to teach Torah publicly. What did Rabbi Akiva do? He didn't listen. He taught Torah publicly. They caught him. And as they were combing his flesh with iron combs, they were torturing him. What does he say? He says, now for the first time in my life, I can understand what does it mean? Even when he is taking away the neshama, which means when a person passes from the world, how does a person leave? Does he leave easy or does he leave hard? Yes.
I thought the reason was that the Roman emperor went to these 10 big adolim, and he was one of them, and he said, you need to be punished because you guys were never punished when they kidnapped and stole Yosef. And then the Kohen Gadol, they were all questioning it, so he put on his tefillin and he went up to Shemayim and said, is this true? And Hashem said yes. And they all got skinned without saying anything.
Chazak me'od. That is exactly what the Gemara tells us. But what was he arrested for? Right. They were all the rabbis were arrested for the same thing. They were teaching Torah publicly, or they were trying to maintain Yiddishkeit in an environment that was trying to destroy Yiddishkeit. Okay? Now, B'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha. What's the last part of that pasuk? B'chol me'odecha. What is b'chol me'odecha?
All your being.
All your being is nafshecha. What's b'chol? The hardest one. The hardest one is not giving up your life. That's not the hardest one, believe it or not. What's the hardest one? Who said that? Chazak. Money. Let me ask you a question. A Gentile comes to a Jew and says, I want you to bow down to this pesel, or I'm going to kill you. What's the halacha? Yareg v'ayavor. He doesn't commit suicide, but he lets the Gentile kill him if he can't get away. Yes? What happens if the Gentile comes to you and says, I want you to take this 1 ounce of chazir and I want you to eat it, or I'm going to kill you? What's the halacha?
Eat it.
Eat it, meaning what? Except for the 3, we know the 3, right? Gilu arayot shvichut damim and avodah zarah. A Jew does not give up his life. Now let's make it harder. The Gentile comes to you and says, you know something? I want you to eat this ounce of pig. And if you don't eat this ounce of pig, I'm going to confiscate all of your property, all of your bank accounts, all of your houses, all of your cars, all your iPhones. What's the halacha? What? No. What's the halacha?
Don't eat it.
No, that's a nice drasha, but that's not the halacha.
That's why I said you can kill him. Because it's like you're dead. Bro, if he takes all of your,
If he takes everything, whatever Esau's son went to rob.
Okay, but let me ask a question. If that's the case, then why didn't Yaakov? Okay, let me ask another from that. You always go there. Why didn't Yaakov kill it? Why didn't Yaakov kill Eliphaz?
Because he was willing to.
Because not allowed. You can't kill him because of that, because he's taking your money. The test of Kiddush Hashem, the test of Ahavat Hashem is not to save the cash. The test of Ahavat Hashem is for the person to willingly give up their money for one lo ta'aseh in the Torah. That's Rambam, Mefurash, yes.
In that case, he couldn't kill Eliphaz because he told Eliphaz to take the money, which means that Eliphaz came to kill him in the beginning, and he told Eliphaz to take the money. Why would he kill Eliphaz? Because he could have killed Eliphaz when Eliphaz came to kill him.
Actually, he could have, because it's a road death.
So he didn't kill him either way.
Could have killed him.
No, but either way, he was coming to kill him.
Why didn't he kill him?
Well, because he told Eliphaz, right? I don't want. Number one, if he kills Eliphaz, then there's a whole war with Esau.
He's running away. He already has a war with Esau.
He sent Eliphaz to kill him.
Why didn't he kill
He
Eliphaz?
sent Eliphaz to kill him. Esau sent Eliphaz to kill Yaakov.
Okay.
Eliphaz didn't want to kill Yaakov.
We have to look into that, because we know that some great people came from Amalek, yes?
You don't think that Yaakov could have won a fight against Eliphaz?
I'm not sure. Maybe he could, maybe he couldn't. But the halacha is, if you look at the Rambam, I'll show you inside if you don't trust me, you can't kill him. You have a choice to, the Gentile didn't come to kill you. You're learning a drasha and saying, Ani nechshav kemet, and since he's taken away all my money, that means that he's doing a maaseh retzach, and therefore I can kill him. But that's not correct.
No, I learned that Esau sent him to kill him, like actually kill him.
I got it. He could have killed him, but he didn't kill him. He gave him his money because ani nechshav kemet. The example I brought to you was a Gentile comes to a Jew and says, "Give me all your money," and then somebody said, I'm not sure it was you. Someone said, "Well, ani nechshav kemet. So if he takes away all my money, it's like he's killing me. So therefore, I can kill him." That's not the drasha. Okay, Seder? Good, very good. Chazak, boys, very good. Okay, so we see b'chol me'odecha with all of the money. Why is that last?
Because it's the hardest.
Because it's the hardest one. And that's why if you look at the difference in the first paragraph of the Kriyat Shema and the second paragraph of the Kriyat Shema, there's a big difference. In the first paragraph, what does it say? In the second paragraph of Kriyat Shema, what does it say? There's something missing. What's missing? Me'odecha. So what's the penalty? Ve'asafta deganecha. What does it mean, ve'asafta deganecha? You will gather your grain. Sounds like a bracha, right? I have grain. I'm going to gather it. No. The bracha is not the Jew gathers the grain. The bracha is the goy gathers the grain and gives it to the Jew. That's the bracha. So when a Jewish person is doing, according to the way it is, Ahavat Hashem with all three, me'odecha, what happens? Others come and do the work for you. The klala, which is in the bracha, is the asafta deganecha, that you have to gather your own grain. You're not having someone else to do it. Those are the three. Where do we learn how to, and there's another way we can show we love Hashem. How's the other way? By not just knowing why we're right, but knowing why the Goyim are wrong. Knowing why Islam is wrong. Knowing why Christianity is wrong. Knowing why atheism is wrong. Where do we learn that from? Ki yakum b'keibecha navi o cholem chalom. In Parashat Re'eh, it says over there, a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, prophet or a dreamer of dreams is going to come to you, and he's going to perform a sign or a wonder. and that sign or a wonder is going to come true. And what's going to happen? He's going to tell you to go after other gods. And what does the parasha say? Don't listen to him. And what's going to happen to that prophet of the dreamer of dreams? He's going to die. So here's the question. Why does God allow the miracle to happen? What does the pasuk say? Ki menaseh, because God is testing. Hayishchem ohavim et Hashem. Do you love God? So we learn from here, another way a Jew can show love of God is how? By learning why the goyim are incorrect, why all the other religions are wrong, while no religion is also wrong, why we're right. Not just that we're right, but why everybody else is wrong. How do we learn how to love? We learn that from family. And what I said last week, Noah, what made Noah a tzaddik? Okay, good. What Averis didn't he do?
Stealing.
Show me the pasuk. Where does it say what he did?
Actually, don't know which pasuk it is.
Well, it's right there. Chumash is right there. Beginning of Parashat Noah. It's the only place it's going to be. It says, each tzaddik, tamim haya bedorotav et ha'elohim italech Noah. It doesn't say how he was a tzaddik, at least not clearly.
I'm saying it doesn't even specify if he really was.
It does. It says each tzaddik.
In his nation, I'm saying, in his generation.
Okay, that's Rashi. Rashi says Gnui. Rashi says Gnayo Shevach. Let's learn it for Shevach. He was a tzaddik in his generation. Great. I'd love to be a tzaddik in my generation. It's not a bad thing to be, right? So what was he a tzaddik about? Next pasuk. Vayoled Noach shlosha banim et Shem et Ham et Yafet. Noach was a family man. Everybody else were Rishayim. They didn't care about raising a family. That's what we said last week. Noach had how many wives? One. His 3 sons, how many wives did they have? 1. Whoa, holy moly. Given the generation what was going on, that was a Pele. That's what made Noach a tzaddik, at least according to the simple, based on the pasuk. So Noach was a family man. And what's the purpose of family? One of the purposes of family is when we learn how to love others, we learn how to love God. A baby is born. Tell me, anybody you have little babies at home? What do their hands look like when they're born? Closed. Why are they closed?
When hospitals they die, they don't.
They have nothing to give. They only take. As a matter of fact, if babies weren't really, really cute, we would get rid of them. We wouldn't keep them. They're just they don't show any love. Even when they smile, it's probably gas. Okay? So what happens as one gets older? Poteach et yadecha. You have to open your hands. What does that mean, open your hands? Patoach tiftach et yadecha. You have to open up your hands to others. You have to recognize you're one person. Very important. But there's 8,500,000,000 people in the world except for you. And amongst the Yidden, there's a lot of other Jews also. Yeah, so we are important. If you're number 10 in a million, you're important. But the first 9 are also important, yes? We're all very important, yes? So therefore, we have to appreciate that and be ready to give. And that's a process that one learns as they grow up. Yes?
I've heard that the reason why babies come out with their hands closed is because they're taking as much Torah as they can, leaving the world.
Okay, very nice.
When they leave, their hands are open. And
Very
they're
nice.
receiving everything.
Oh, but the Torah you take with you.
I don't know.
No, I thought like
That's what I heard.
this is like the malach touching your.
That's the Masechet Nidah, that when the baby is, before it's born, Malach comes and gives it a thing over here so it forgets all the Torah. So here's the question, since you're bringing that up. What's the point of teaching the Torah to the baby in utero if as soon as it's born, it hits the thing and it forgets?
So he has the option to learn it all.
Why does he have to be taught it at all? He's going to learn it afterwards. If he wasn't taught it in utero, he's got to learn it afterwards. If he was taught it in utero, he forgets and he's got to learn it afterwards. His neshama knows the right answer. Neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. We say that in the morning, yes? The neshama knows the answer. The question is all the garbage around it.
Maybe you don't come back.
Sefer Torah. Is it easier to write on a cloth that is brand new or a cloth that has been written on? That's correct. That's correct. It's like a baseball glove. Yes, you get a brand new baseball glove, right? Or you get brand new shoes. They hurt for a couple of days, yes? Until they get broken in. Exactly. Same thing there. That's the idea. So God teaches us the Torah in utero. This way, when he does the thing, we forget it. But we had that knowledge in there before. It's easier to learn it. It's especially now with Art Scroll and all the different languages, it's easier to learn it when you've already learned it before. It's a chazara. It's not a first time. Okay, so we learned how to love. Yes.
Are you pro non-Q baby abortion?
Am I what?
Pro non-Q baby abortions.
I'm against abortions completely.
They weren't cute then.
No, I would say you leave in the police station. You can leave in the police station. You don't have to. You don't have to take care. You can't kill them, but you can leave in the police station. Okay. Why should a Jew be against abortions?
Oh,
Because Jews aren't pro-murder.
Okay, but they'll argue it's not murder. They'll argue it's first of all, if we go to the Gemara, it says Ubar Yerach Imo.
30 days, right?
Yerach Imo.
Well, if the baby's already developed, it's 100% considered murder.
Abortion, it's not, it's Yerach Imo.
They
Halachic,
do it after 9. They do it after 9 months.
until it's born, it's Yerach Imo.
We believe in destiny, futures, so maybe you killed someone that. I mean, even
Okay,
if
let's
it's
make
not
a-
murder,
First
let's-
of all, it's still murder, even if
You're allowed to do abortion.
you could have
Rabbi
ended
Cohen
up
said
your life.
if the baby's gonna come out like dysfunctional or damaged, or if it's gonna damage the mother, you're allowed to do
And who should do the abortion? A Gentile doctor or a Jewish doctor?
that.
Jewish.
Probably
I'm just gonna take my guess and say.
Okay, so let's look at that. Retzach, murder is not allowed for Jew or Gentile, correct? Not allowed, correct?
Correct.
Good. Where do we learn for Gentiles that murder is not allowed?
Oh, 7.
And we read it last week. What does it say? Gentlemen, listen to this. You're going to like this one. Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech. Translate. The one who spills the blood of a man in a man, his blood is spilled. Gemara asks Akasha, what's an example of a blood of a man in a man? Ubar, an embryo, which means a Gentile who does an abortion is chayav mita from betin, if there's a betin that could kill him.
Well, but
Wait. Now let's look at a Jew. What's the halacha if a pregnant woman is walking and a Jew chas v'shalom hits her and she has a miscarriage? No. He has to pay. It's not fine, but he has to pay. Whatever the Torah says. I think 50. I think 50 shkalim.
So it's as much as the county and the animals that were stolen and then killed.
Let's understand philosophically why that is. Guys, you get where I'm going? The life of a Jew is a high level. Not to say that a life of Gentile is not a high level, but there's no difference between an embryo Gentile and a Gentile that's alive. It's the same level of chayim. So therefore, a Gentile who kills an embryo, okay, is chayav mita as far as the Torah is concerned. Remember, they only got 7. What's the punishment if a Gentile steals? Death. What's the punishment if a Gentile eats ever min achai? Death. Goy. Nah, stop. So with us, certain things, what's the punishment if a Jew eats ever min achai? Lashes. So since we got 613, some of the punishments are a little lighter because all they got is 7. So, it's a much more deterrent type of situation, yes? But a Jew who, God forbid, causes an abortion on a baby, causes an abortion, he only has to pay damages. It's not until crowning, until the baby's coming out. Once the baby's coming out, then the baby's life. Right, correct.
But that proves that it's still not allowed. That's still a
I
big
didn't
avera.
say it's allowed.
Right.
I didn't say it's allowed. And that's Dinei Adam. Dinei Shamayim could be a different world.
So if someone needed an abortion, unluckily, and there was a situation where they were unluckily, is it actually better to have a Jewish doctor or only able to have a Jewish doctor to do it?
So I would suggest we'd have to ask that to a posek. I can't really answer that, but from my understanding, it would be better for a Jewish doctor to do it, because then it's a potentially fnei iver al titen michshol, right, to the goy. And there's a whole question of pikuach nefesh. Is a goy, can he be over in any of his mitzvot because of pikuach nefesh? That's a big question. I don't know the answer to that question. We have v'chai bahem. We have a concept of that pikuach nefesh doche kol Torah kula except for 3. Gentiles may not have that. Okay. That was best. So we see first parasha. You have a question? Go ahead.
Okay, so if it's between the wife and the son, Right, like the wife might die if you have a son, a child.
That's a rodef. That's other inyan, right? So if a mother has a medical illness, and God forbid, if the baby is putting her life in danger, either physical life or psychological life, rape, incest, yes? Therefore, the person get a heter for doing an abortion under that circumstance.
Psychological count?
Oh, yeah.
If the woman was raped and then having that baby will cause her emotional distress.
Correct.
And she's locked to that baby that you're unable.
Mental illness is also pikuach nefesh. Trust me.
Did it Rachel have a child?
Wait, but that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Isn't that interesting? Baruch Hashem. I'm getting you guys to think. All right, I want to get to Lech Lecha. So we talked about God. That's the first parasha. That's called Breshit. Now we talked about family. That's Noach. Now we get to Lech Lecha. What is the subject of Lech Lecha? Country. God, family, country. Yes? How? What's the first thing Avraham Avinu's told? Lech Lecha, go. Where you're living right now, this is not the place for you. Are you going to go someplace else? You have to go to another place to live. So we see the importance of country. What country? Eretz Yisrael. Now, we need to understand, especially given the topics that are going on today, what are the borders of the land of Israel? Because that's what Hamas, Shem and Shem Yerkav, they want all of it, even though they're entitled to none of it, okay? But what are the borders of the land of Israel?
It says somewhere.
It does say somewhere. Believe it or not, it says it in God's book. Holy moly, what a concept. And in what parasha does it tell us the borders of the land of Israel? Lech Lecha. In Lech Lecha, it brings up 10 Canaanite nations. Wait a minute. How many Canaanite nations? 10. How many did Joshua have to get rid of? 7. There are 3 Canaanite nations that were not included in the conquest of Joshua. Why? Because those Canaanite lived outside what we call the proper land of Israel. So if we look over here in Parashat Lech Lecha, it tells us the borders of the land of Israel. If you have a Chumash in front of you, okay. First of all, it says over here, Bayom hahu karat Adonai et Avram brit lemor, and that day God made a covenant with Abraham saying, Lizaracha, to your children. How much of the land did Abraham inherit? All of it? He himself? 0. 175 years on the planet, and he had 0. How do you prove that? No. I know he got into fight with Lot, but that's not how you prove it. No, Lot was waiting for Abraham to die, and then he figured he would get it because it says Lezaracha. So since Abraham had no other children, Lot interpreted Lezaracha means him. Okay, so how do we know Avraham Avinu did not inherit any land? You have a parasha called Chayei Sarah, yes?
Yep.
What happens in Chayei Sarah in the beginning? His wife dies, yes? What does he have to do? Does he bury her in his plot of land that he has in Hebron? No, he has to go and buy land from Ephron. Why does he have to do that? He could have gone to Ephron and said, by the way, God says it all belongs to me. But he couldn't do that. Why not?
Because it didn't belong to him.
Why not?
I thought he wanted to pay.
Well, because
So let's ask, why didn't God give the land to Abraham? Or to Isaac, or to Jacob, or to Joseph? That a good question? If God wants the land of Israel to belong to the Jewish people, why is he torturing Abraham by saying, I'm going to give it to your Dor Revi'i, 4th generation is going to come back here. You, your son, your grandson, you're all going to die in peace, and then a 4th generation is going to come back and inherit the land. Hello, God, what am I, chopped liver? Anybody asked that question before?
it's a good question.
A good question, no?
Yeah.
Pasha tells us. Kilo shalem avon ha'emori ad hena. Meaning what? Even though the Emori did not belong in the land of Israel, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay? They took it. How does God work with the Gentiles? He lets them fill the basket of baddies. And when the basket gets full, what does God do? Egypt, Greece, ancient Persia, Rome, the old Spanish Empire, disappear. That's how God deals with the Gentiles. He lets the basket get filled, and then when the basket is full, boom. With the Jewish people, God only threatens to do that, but he doesn't do it. What does he do with the Jewish people? The same thing your father does with you. If you step out of line, what does he do? He gives you a punishment. Why does he do that? Because he hates you.
No.
Because he loves you. And sometimes the way you show love as a parent is by giving musar, giving rebuke. Okay? So since God loves us, he punishes us immediately as soon as the basket gets a little bit in there. This way it never fills up. So since the Emori, their Avon was not completed, that's why it says the Kanani az ba'aretz. Why is the Torah telling us when Abraham first comes to the land, the Kanani az ba'aretz? That's the message the Torah is telling us, that what? They haven't filled the basket yet, which means I can't give this land to you. I could, but I'm not going to. Now, how did Canaan acquire the land of Israel? I think we talked about this last week. Noah had how many sons? 3. There would have been more, but one of his sons did something very nice to him. So he couldn't have any more sons. Correct. He castrated him. Yeah, okay. That was Ham.
It's a medrash.
No, the Torah tells us that Ham, it doesn't tell us what Ham did. It says he saw him naked, and the Rashi gives 2 opinions what he did. He did either that or he castrated him, or some said he had relations with him. Don't ask. Anyway.
Some say he raped him, and then another one is he castrated him.
Why did he do that? Why did Ham do that? Because he didn't want to share anymore. There are already 3 rulers here when Noah dies. One day Noah's going to die, and there's 3 left in charge, right? I don't want to share with anybody else. And it was a very nice distribution. Ham was given Africa, Yefet was given Europe, and Shem was given the Middle East. How do we know that Shem was given the Middle East? Parashat Noach. Umaki tzedek melech shalem v'hu kohen le'el elyon. What does that mean? Malki tzedek. Who's Malki tzedek? Shem ben Noach. He was the king of Shalem. What is Shalem? No, it's a place. It was called Shalem. Then it was called Shalem. Avraham Avinu, in the end of Lech Lecha, at the end of Vayera, what does it say over there by the Akedah? He calls the place Hashem Yera'eh. Yes? What place was that? Every time the Torah says Hamakom, that's Har HaMoriah. Hamakom, Har HaMoriah. Even though the Torah doesn't say that. Okay? So when Avraham gave it another name, Yeru, its previous name was Shalem. Altogether you have Yerushalayim. Even though the word Yerushalayim never appears in the Torah, it appears many, many times in the Tanakh, 640 something times. How many times did the word Jerusalem appear in the Quran? Never. Ain't that interesting? The Quran is the book of the Muslims. It's their holy book. Well, it's not so holy, but they think it's a holy book. Okay? Now, so we see what? And the Pasuk even says, the gamet the goy asher ya'avodu dan anochi, which means there's going to be retribution to the Egyptians, yes? And over here, I can't give you this land yet. It has to wait 4 generations. That's called the Brit Ben Abitarim. Incidentally, when did the Brit Ben Abitarim happen? Even the Ramban, who doesn't like to say en mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah, Many other Mefarshim, they say it like water. The Ramban doesn't like to do it. But here, he admits, when did the Brit Ben Abetarim happen? Before Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha, how old was Avraham Avinu at Lech Lecha? 75. When did the Brit Ben Abetarim happen? When he was 70. Nope. He came once to the land of Canaan without the family to check it out. And then he went back and got his family. Yes. That's what he did. So Lech Lecha is after. How do we know that? Because the Gemara in Masechet Brachot says, Avraham Avinu is the first person to call Hashem Aleph Daled Nun Yud. And what pasuk do they bring? They bring the pasuk from Brit Ben Abetarim. The problem, if you look at the parasha, 10 pesukim before the Brit Ben Abetarim, Avraham uses the word Aleph Daled Nun Yud. Meaning what? The first time is, what, the Gemara didn't know, the rabbis of the Gemara didn't know. No, here's how we learn that Parashat Brit Ben Abetarim happened before Lech Lecha. So Avraham knows, and he's given in the Brit Ben Abetarim the greater borders of Israel. We need to understand those greater borders. We've never had them. What is the eastern border of Israel? Well, we have the Mediterranean Sea, yes? Yam HaGadol. Obviously, that includes Gaza, okay? And what about the western border? What about the southwestern border? How far south? It's machloket what Nachal Mitzrayim is. According to some opinions, Nachal Mitzrayim is the Nile River, which basically means a piece of Egypt belongs to us too. According to another opinion, Nachal Mitzrayim is a wadi that's south of Gaza. Okay, so different opinions.
How big is the space that we're
Huge. We're going to get. Now let's go the other direction. What is the border of the land of Israel as far as God is concerned to Avraham on the eastern side? What sea?
the Red Sea.
No, the east. The Red Sea is south. No, Mediterranean is west. What's east?
Jordan.
No. The Euphrates. Euphrates River. Nachal, it's a river.
Oh, that's what they mean from the river to the sea.
Ah. So they say they want to get rid of the Jews from the river to the sea. They need to understand we need to get rid of them from the sea to the river. Which river? Not the Jordan River. Okay, which means the country of Jordan. Yes, we know there's a country called Jordan. Before 1917 didn't exist. It was part of what was called the Palestinian Mandate. It was part of the Ottoman Empire. When the Turks picked the wrong side, it was the end of the Caliphate in World War I, and the Brits got control of the Palestinian Mandate, which included all of what's called now Jordan and all of Israel. And the Brits had an unbelievable idea. They're not stupid. They said, we need to split this up a little bit. So what are we going to do? We're going to give the Jewish people everything that's west of the Jordan River. We're going to let them call it whatever the heck they want to call it. And then we're going to give the Palestinian people, well, it wasn't even a nation, whoever they are, people who are living in Palestine, let's put it that way, okay? Because Indians are not called Americans, they're called Indians, but they're maybe original Americans, I don't know. But and the Goyim, the Arabs, were supposed to be given the land that was east of the Jordan River, which now they made a country called Transjordan. What is the population of Palestinians in Jordan? 70%. I wonder why. So the whole nonsense, they already have a country. It's called other Arabs. No, it's called Jordan. It was usually initially called Transjordan. That's called the Balfour Declaration. What changed everything? Oil, unfortunately. Ammon is in Jordan. That's Ammon, from the word Ammon. You ever hear the nation Ammon mentioned in the Torah? Yes, we're going to read about next week's parasha. Okay? So now, the eastern border is where? The Euphrates River. That includes all of Jordan. That includes half of Iraq. And actually, it goes to the Persian Gulf. Now, what about the northern border of Israel?
Syria.
Go higher. It goes over Lebanon is also a fake country. Syria into a piece of Turkey. Now you see why all the Rishaim, Turkey and Syria and Iraq, and by the way, Iran,
Israel is supposed to be.
that is greater Israel.
So that's how it makes sense when all the Jews are.
When Mashiach comes, we're not just getting the little sliver. And let me ask a question. Why do we need all that land? Oh, okay, but there's still only 18 million Jews.
Grow crops and to have animals.
Again, why do we need that land?
Get rid of them.
No, they can't live there either. It's going to be Goyish Rhine.
So we can make korbanot.
We make korbanot on Har HaBayit, not in Amman.
No, so we
All
can
the
raise
Jews that are
them.
gonna come back,
Yeah?
are gonna be maybe billions of Jews. So
They're not billions of Jews. There's only 18 million Jews.
no, but Mashiach
No.
comes all them back.
So first of all, who gets to have a portion in the land of Israel? Fathers. Has to be from the Shevet. If a person through the Mashiach cannot get their lineage traced to one of the Shvatim through the father, or if there was any conversion that went on, maybe, then what happens? That Jew doesn't have a portion in Israel proper. Or Gerim. Where do Gerim have land? I mean, what is a Gentile? Where is Shemayav Avtalyon? Two Gerim that are huge in Torah. Where are they going to have their plot of land? But they're not entitled because they're Gerim and all their descendants?
Wait, so we have some of Egypt, the whole Israel, Jordan, Syria, and some of Turkey.
Correct. Good morning. And part of Saudi Arabia too, if we go south. Okay, I have it. See the thing? Here's Saudi Arabia. A nice big piece of northern Saudi Arabia, which means that oil belongs to us. So this is what God promises the Jewish people in the Brit Berabitarim. And this is the land. They're fighting now over a little sliver of Gaza. Best of luck. Best of luck. You have no idea what they're going to be losing. All these people are going to have to leave. Baruch Hashem, there's plenty. They can go to Kuwait. They can live in Qatar. They can live in the southern part of Saudi Arabia. That's okay. They can even have Mecca because Mecca is not part of the land of Israel, thank God. Okay? So this is all going to be ours. And who's going to give it to us? God. Rashi, what he's talking about is not talking about the little sliver we have right now. Rashi is talking about this.
How are you gonna get it?
1 second.
Maybe a war.
So Masechet Avodah Zarah in the beginning talks about when the Mashiach come, the Goyim are going to realize that they were mistaken. We have psukim in the Torah that tell us that, in the Tanakh. And the Goyim are going to come and they're going to say, it belongs to us. So what's going to happen? Very important in next week's parasha, Lech Lecha. What does it say? Avraham Avinu couldn't have children. Hagar said, Sarah said, you know what? Have children with my maidservant Hagar. Yes? What happened? Hagar became pregnant right away. That told everybody in the world that the difficulty of having children was not Avraham, was Sarah. What does the pasuk in last week's parasha say? The Sarah akara en lavalad. Dr. Rashi, what does Rashi say? What does it mean she was barren, she had no children? It's the same thing. Why is the Torah repeating this language? She was barren and she had no bet valad. She had no uterus. So when Hagar became pregnant right away, there was nothing wrong with Avraham. He was fine. Sarah was the problem. And what happened? Hagar was Egyptian, but she was a slave. Again, not a small woman. She was a daughter of Paro, and she would rather be a slave in the house of Avraham Avinu. Keep that in mind. A slave in the house of Avraham Avinu rather than being a melech. That was Hagar. That's their mother. What happened? Hagar becomes pregnant. So she thinks she's a big shot. Why? Because now her son, or whatever's born, is going to be inheriting everything. And she started prancing around. Unfortunately, Avraham was a good guy, but he didn't have enough justice within him. He was a man of chesed, but not a man of din. Sarah took care of that for him. So what does Sarah Imenu say?
Kick her out.
No, that's next week's parasha. Chamasi alecha. Ooh, what word? Chamasi alecha. Chamasi alecha. I gave you my maidservant. I gave you my maidservant. And now she thinks that she is the Geveret. What does Avraham Avinu tell her? Okay, here's the question. We have other imahot that they were slaves, Bilhah and Zilpah. When they were taken by Yaakov, they were freed by their mistress. Before Leah gave Bilhah over, she freed her. Before Rachel gave Zilpah over, she freed her. So that means that all of the children born of Zilpah and Bilhah were Bnei Chorin. What's the whole machloket here? Sarah says, I gave shifchati, my shifcha. She was mine, not yours. I gave her as a shifcha, which means she's not a free woman. So what's going to be the answer, in addition to what Rashi said? Okay, you Muslims, you think you're entitled to this land?
Anything that's there.
Oh, Mashe kana eved kana rabo.
That's interesting.
Did you guys get that?
How was he?
1 second, I'll answer your question at the end. You understand what we just said? Ishmael is Eved. All of his descendants are Avadim.
To us.
To us. They just don't know it yet. Because Hagar was Eved.
So then we should get Saudi Arabia too. And
So they will be unbelievable
and Iraq.
Avadim.
We should get all that land then.
Avadim. These are all these deal with all the Avadim, all the Arabs. Not all the Muslims Arabs, by the way. Some of them in Indonesia. But because we don't do the Ratzon of Hashem good enough, and therefore we haven't been entitled to it yet.
No, but why now?
How do we know? This is very important. With this, I want to finish up. Okay? We have certain basic principles of faith. The Rambam lists 13.
principles.
Okay, it's a machloket amongst the Rishonim, whether there's 13, whether there's 4. Nobody disagrees with any of the 13. It's just a question, are they categories or subcategories? Okay, that's the whole. So the last one of the principles of the faith is what? A Jew has to believe in the resurrection of the dead. Oh, see, now you're asking the question. So now you're going to, this is probably the most important thing I'm going to say today. What I say from the beginning, the most important thing is emunah, yirat shamayim. Resurrection. The Gemara says, what happens if a Jew doesn't believe in the resurrection?
Well, he goes against-
What happens if the Powerball is $2 billion and you don't buy a ticket? You don't win. You have zero chance. I mean, you have 0.0000008% chance of winning Powerball if you buy a ticket. But you have zero chance of winning the Powerball if you don't buy a ticket. If a Jew doesn't believe in the resurrection of the dead, they don't get resurrected. Or they get resurrected and die afterwards.
Oh, after 7 years.
I don't know about 7 years. That's not what Daniel says. So the Gemara says, not only is it a requirement for a Jew to believe in the resurrection of the dead, that's not enough. You have to believe that the resurrection of the dead, Tchiyat HaMetim, is written in the Torah. Not in the Tanakh, not in Yehezkel chapter 37 with the dry bones. It's written in the Torah. Please tell me where. Minah hanemileh. Like I said, if you remember nothing else, we talked about God, family, country. That's also important. What country, the size of the country, this is all what you need to know. Then now let's talk about what pasuk. So they go through a bunch of proof texts, and they reject many of them until they settle on one proof text in Masechet Sanhedrin in Parashat. Ready? למען ירבו ימיכם בימי בניכם על האדמה אשר נשבע. Very important to pronounce the ayin. With a hey, it's captivity. With a ayin, it's swore. Big difference. One is kfira, one's not. Asher nishba Adonai la'avotechem latet. No! Oh, you fell for it. Lahem. Big difference. למען ירבו ימיכם ובני בניכם על האדמה שנשבע אדוני לאבותיכם. The land that God swore to your fathers. What land did God swear to the fathers? What we just talked about. This land, not what we have now. This land is what they swore to the fathers, what God swore to the fathers. Latet lahem. Who's lahem? Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. But we know Abraham had to buy a plot of land for his wife when she died. Yaakov Avinu had to buy Shechem. What do we see from here? The Avot never inherited the land. Therefore, the Avot have to come back, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, to inherit the land.
Oh, which means that they have to be resurrected.
Very good. Now we understand what Breshit is telling us. Breshit is not just stories of the forefathers. Avraham Avinu had faith his whole life. God made him lots of promises, yes? And how many of them did he fulfill? Very few. To the point where he gives him a son and then he says, take him to be sacrificed. What's the message? When God makes promises, he keeps his promises. There's two kinds of promises God makes. One is a promise for bad, and one is a promise for good. A promise for bad, does God have to keep that promise?
No.
No. How do we know? Good. But what's the sword? Where do we see that glaringly? Yonah. Goyim, kal vachomer, Jews. Nineveh's Goyim, they weren't Jews, right? So Yonah didn't want to go because he knew God would forgive them. One second. He knew, you asked that question again, save it for the end, okay? He knew God was going to forgive them. That's why he ran away, because Ashur would come and decimate and would get rid of the 10 tribes. Yonah did not want to let them survive. He wanted them to die. God said, that's not your business, Yonah. This is my business. That was the whole situation. So he goes and he tells them they're going to die. And what happened? Well, the city's going to be overturned. And they made teshuvah. So we learn from here that even though there's a prophecy that's for bad, it doesn't have to come true. So here's the big question. How do you test a prophet?
You asked him a couple questions, I believe, that he has to predict something that will happen in the future.
Okay, so Yonah's a false prophet then? He predicted that the city was going to be overturned in 40 days, and it wasn't. Did people say, oh, Yonah, you're a lousy prophet? How do we test the prophet? You can only test the prophet on good prophecies. You cannot test the prophet on bad prophecies because it's the power of teshuvah. Here's the wonderful thing. God is not like a regular business person. When he makes a deal, he fulfills his end of the bargain, even if the person is conditioned and they don't fulfill theirs. He still fulfills his end of the bargain. So all the prophecies of the Tanakh that talk about the Mashiach, that talked about the Goyim working for us, that talking about the fact that they're going to recognize the truth, that there's going to be peace in the world, that there's going to be the Mashiach, resurrection of the dead, all these prophecies, they are waiting to come true, and they will come true. That's the testament that all these prophets were correct. And if you think about it, some of the prophets already happened. Did anybody ever read Mark Twain?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you read a book called Innocents Abroad?
I did not.
Okay. You don't have to read the whole book. Just read what he writes about the land of Israel. Mark Twain was a Christian. Samuel Clemens is his real name. And he was very wealthy, so he took a trip. And he wanted to see, he took a world trip in 1850, 1860. That was something to do. And he went, and the place where he's most excited to go to was where? Not Rome. He wanted to go to the Holy Land, because that's the land of the Bible. Rome is not the land of the Bible. And how he describes in a page and a half of the land of Israel in 1860, full of rocks. You can't tell where the road is or where the rocks are because there's rocks everywhere. I walk for miles. I don't see anybody. It was empty. Nobody was there. He said the swamps, the mosquitoes, all the things that we know. Anybody been to Israel recently?
It's all full of greenery.
Oh my gosh. Why is that? Because there are prophecies that say that what is the greatest marker that the Mashiach is coming? The land of Israel bearing fruit. And here's a better proof than you had from 18 years ago. We had wonderful places in Gush Katif that were growing all kinds of vegetables. You see pictures of Gaza now. That's what happens when the Goyim are in charge. The land of Israel is like a Jewish wife. She only has one husband. And that husband is us. Okay? And that's so we see here what's coming through our day today. And I just want to finish with this one other thing. There are very few prophecies in the Torah that talk about Acharit Hayamim, the end of days. Yes? We know Yaakov Avinu wanted to tell his children Acharit Hayamim in Parashat Vayechi, and then he was prevented. According to Ramban, he only stopped briefly, and then he told it anywhere, but he did it, he put it within the brachot he gave to the sons, contained within there, and you go through the Ramban, he'll show you. Within there is all the prophecies, what's going to happen in the future. But we have another individual in the Torah that told us what's going to happen at the end. Anybody know who I'm talking about? A great prophet. Almost equivalent to Moshe. Huh? No. David HaMelech wasn't a prophet. He had the Ruach HaKodesh. No. Come on, guys. Okay, here's the question. In Masechet Avodah Zarah, it also says, the Goyim are going to come at the end of days, and they're going to say, you know what? We would have followed the Torah if you would have given it to us. So God, of course, is going to say, I wanted to give it to you, but you refused it. Come on, if you would have given us somebody like Moses, we would have followed the Torah. What's God's response? I gave you somebody like Moses. His name was Bil'am.
Oh, right.
Bil'am prophetically had the potential of Moshe Rabbeinu. But what did he do with that prophetic ability? That's your fault. That's his fault. 1 second. What is Bil'am, after he tries cursing the Jewish people 3 times and gives the greatest brachot that are almost the greatest brachot in the entire Torah for us, yes? At the end, what does he say? Ve'ata, now, hineni holech le'ami, I'm going to go back to my nation. Lecha i'atzecha, now I'm going to give you advice. Asher ya'aseh ha'am hazeh le'amecha be'acharit hayamim. What this nation is going to do to not you, Balak, to all the Gentile nations, which means Bil'am is predicting what's going to happen in the Messianic age from the Gentile perspective. So he goes through Edom, and then he says, okay, and then he goes to Amalek. He says Amalek's going to be lost. And then he says, the last 2 sentences before he leaves. Vayisa meshalo vayomar, oi, this is where we get oi from, oi mi yichyeh misumo el. What is that talking about? He goes through the Keni, he goes through Edom, he goes through Amalek. What is misumo el? What was that talking about? Yes. Arabs can't pronounce sh. S. They don't say sh. They can't. That's how Israelis can tell, unless they train themselves, if the person is Arabic or not. Salam alaikum. Salam alaikum. They don't say sh. There is no sh in Arabic. Only s, or s to be more specifically. Yes? So, misumo el, what is sumo? Shemo el. Now, which other nation besides for Yisrael has El inside his name? Very good. There is no other Gentile nation that has El in his name except for Yishmael. So this pasuk, Oy mi yichyem Sumoel, is talking about the final galut, which is the galut of Yishmael, which we're in now, I think, since 9/11. Watch this. Next pasuk. V'tzim miyad kitim, v'inu ashur, v'inu aver, v'gamhu adeh oved. What is that talking about? What is tzim? We know there's a shipping company. It's called Zim. It's a shipping company. Israeli shipping company, because what do? They don't just have trucks. They basically have boats, right? It's a shipping company, boats, not planes, boats, yes? Tzim is boats. Miyad kitim. What is kitim? Now, we read about kitim last week. It's one of the descendants of Yefet. One of the descendants of Yefet is kitim. This is my perush. If someone else says it, then I'm modeh, but I haven't heard it from anybody else. In Hebrew, what is a kat? A group. What is Yud Mem Gematria? A group of 50. Can anybody think of a country of a group of 50? Oh, very good. 50 states. Ships will come from Kitim. And some of them say Kitim is Iye Hayam. And that is a reference to Iye Hayam, which is America, okay? The Inu Ashur. And they're going to afflict Ashur. What is Ashur? That is northern Iraq and Syria. The Inu Ever. And he's going to afflict Ever. Ever is what is ever west, east of the Euphrates River, which is half of Iraq and Iran. Yo, good morning. Very good. This, I think, maybe they were there in 1973. I don't know. I was a little baby back then. I don't know. I think this has apocalyptic ramifications. Okay, what's going on right now? It's a terrible tragedy. It's really, really, we understand. But the Gemara talks about what's called Chevle Mashiach. Talks about Chevle Mashiach. And there are certain rabbis that said, I don't want to live during the Chevle Mashiach. We're in the time of the Chevle Mashiach. Just like a woman, before she gives birth to a baby, what happens? Anybody who, right? The first, the hours before the baby is born is not exactly so good for the lady. Yes? She's in a lot of pain unless she gets the epidural. And even then, it's uncomfortable. Yes? Say that again? Redemption. Now, this part, who's this talking about? I don't think America. I think this is talking about Ishmael. I think it's talking about Oy mi yichyem Sumoel, the gam who's who? Yishmael adeh oved. This, I think, is, and then he stops, and that's it. Then he goes home. That's the last of the prophecies of Acharit Hayamim. So I think we're in very, very special times. It requires a lot of avodat Hashem, a lot of emunah, a lot of tefillah. But Be'ezrat Hashem, maybe we will be witness to the final redemption, Be'ezrat Hashem, sooner, maybe tomorrow. Pesach is a great time. And hopefully we'll see it soon. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen v'amen. We have a minyan? Rabbi Hanania ben Akash omer, atzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu lezakot et Yisrael lefi